So our very first overclock, and I can actually even point at these ones, very first overclock is thermal liquid coolant. What thermal liquid coolant does is it makes it so we have basically half of our tier 1 and half of our tier 3 in terms of cooling. That's pretty good for the Drak. The Drak already is fairly good by itself, just making it so you can shoot it longer is even better. You can stack the cooling on top of one another. If you don't put bouncing rounds into S tier, I'm going to commit war crimes. Alright, so thermal liquid coolant, I'd probably put up into B tier or A tier. It's pretty good. It's a nice clean overclock. You can build it however you'd like. Usually the way that I build it is going with my standard Drak build, so it's something along these lines. But this can be switched out for whatever you want. There's plenty of options here, especially since you don't need the cooling in tier 1 and 3. This is just so that we have a faster or a more sustained rate of fire. But you could go with a faster rate of fire, you could go with faster projectile speed, you could go with more accuracy. You could also go with anything that you want in like tier 4. I wouldn't really recommend manual heat dump or hot feet. Neither of those really help with this because your gun's going to be staying cool most of the time. So those two are a little bit redundant and likely won't be able to trigger very often. Alright, up next we have aggressive venting, which aggressive venting is now a clean overclock. So ignore this, think of it as a clean, impact deflection, and aggressive venting got switched. What aggressive venting lets you do is overheat your weapon, or when your weapon overheats, it deals fire damage to everything around you. It also fears everything around you, which is great, because aggressive venting has basically no downside. Well, it doesn't have any downside now. So even if you're just using the Drak as is, you're still going to get some benefit from it. Hey, for sure, with cryo it's really fun. Aggressive venting? Yeah, with cryo it is really fun. Even without that, like with IFGs it's really fun too. You can throw like an IFG down and then just keep running in and out of it. It kind of depends though too, because the other problem with aggressive venting is that it's really easy to get shot by your teammates when you're using it. So, you know, you go to run up and then use it and like overheat the gun, and then you get shot in the back or something, which kind of sucks. I think I'm going to put aggressive venting up into high A tier. It is really good right now. It gets you a lot of damage, it gets you a lot of sustain with the gun, and there's no downside for using it. If you do overheat the weapon, doesn't matter, you just bring the heat back, or you get the overheat duration reduced, so you don't have to be out of the fight as long. And it's really good if you like moving really fast to scout. The way I build aggressive venting is just all for getting that aggressive overheat going. So faster rate of fire to build up the heat faster, more ammo because we might as well have it. A lot of the damage that we're doing is coming from the fire, so we don't necessarily need the damage. Hot feet because we're going to be overheating this constantly, we might as well be moving fast. Electricity because I really like mixing the fire with the electricity, although any of them in tier 4 are really good. And then manually heat dump, so that way we can overheat the weapon as soon as it gets to 50% and burn everything around us and still be able to move really quick. Moving on, up next we do have Rewire mod. So what Rewire mod does, this is a balanced overclock. Whenever you overheat your weapon, then you get refunded a certain amount of ammo back. This is dependent on how much you overheat it, so if you use manual heat dump, you'll get less, but if you completely overheat it, you'll get more returning back to you. You do have a longer overheat duration, but Rewire mod gives you like an insane amount of ammo back, and if you just hold down the trigger and just keep firing, you'll be good to go. You can have a lot of ammo from that. I think I'm going to put Rewire mod up into B tier. For me, Rewire mod is kind of awkward. It's kind of weird. It can be good. It can be really good on egg hunt missions where you have to have a long sustained fight, or where it turns into a long sustained fight. Same with like point extracts or oil rig missions, but it can feel really awkward on any sort of like escort mission or salvage mission where overheating your gun and waiting for the overheat to refund your ammo just isn't that great for those mission objectives where you just have to defend the area or defend Dottie, and you end up just taking a bunch of damage there because your gun isn't working, or you're just not killing things super quick. Either way, it can feel a little bit awkward. Any mission where you don't have to do that and you're free to move around though, Rewire mod can be really good. So that's why I think I'll put it in a compromise of B tier. Can be pretty solid, so I will go with faster rate of fire so we can overheat the gun faster, just shoot it quicker. Really, any of them in tier 1 are fine though. You can go with extra ammo, or you can go with more damage. I actually like going with more damage with this one because we end up getting a lot of ammo back as long as you are constantly overheating it. Hot feet because we are going to be overheating it. Any of them are fine in tier 4 once again. I like electricity. And then I usually go with the thermal feedback loop so that we can overheat it even quicker. So impact deflection, despite what it shows here on this one, is not a clean anymore. It was switched with Rewire mod. It is now a balanced overclock. And what this one does is let you bounce your rounds once. So every time you shoot a round, it can bounce one more time, so you can potentially hit an enemy twice or hit 2 enemies with one shot. And this also reduces your rate of fire now. So you have -2 to your rate of fire, which isn't a huge deal because the Drak still has a pretty good rate of fire, but it is something to consider when taking this one. -2 rate of fire is neglectable. That is true. The downside isn't that big of a deal. The upside is pretty nice. It's mostly that it's nice when you like put Plasma Splash on it, because without Plasma Splash, impact deflection is still good, but I think this makes it so much better because you can just spread out so much more damage. Thinking like high A tier for impact. High A tier, low S tier. Impact deflection is really good right now. It's one of Scout's best options for clearing up swarms. Same goes with aggressive venting. So I'm going to put it up here. Very good overclock. The downside is pretty neglectable. The way that I usually build impact deflection is going with the Plasma Splash. Outside of that, you can kind of build it however you'd like. You could make up the rate of fire in tier 1, or you could go with more sustained fire. Usually I build it something like this for more sustained fire, and then just use this for crowd clear. It's really great for clearing up swarmers. It can be pretty good for clearing up jellyfish, and it's also pretty good for clearing up guards. You don't have tons of damage towards big enemies, but you can take a secondary that makes up for that, and you're good to go. First up, we got Shield Battery Booster, which, let me check to make sure all the things that Shield Battery Booster does, because I usually forget. Alright, Shield Battery Booster gives us 1 more rate of fire, 100 extra battery, 50% cooling rate, or sorry, negative 50% cooling rate, 50% more heat per shot, 2 times the overheat duration, and when your shields are full, you get 5.5 more direct damage and double the projectile velocity. However, upon overheating, you lose the bonus that Shield Battery Booster gives you. Now, those first effects that I just said are all the bonuses that you get passively upon adding this. The other one for the 5.5 damage and the double the projectile speed, you lose when you have any less than 100% of your shield. If you got shield link on the non-shield, oh yeah, shield disruption. Shield disruption, this thing is absolutely D tier, because then it's not really a bonus to you. It's like it's okay then, but I don't think it'd be enough of a bonus to take in on even those missions. I'm going to put Shield Battery Booster into B tier just because it can fluctuate as to how good it is depending on both the team and the mission type. Shield Battery Booster does get you a lot of bonuses, and it's really nice to take the direct damage here in tier 2, because if you want to do that, then you do hit 16.5 damage, you can clear up big things really quick, and you can clear up swarms with just a single shot, which is nice. The upsides can be good with this one, but the downsides are pretty severe, and it really depends on the biome that you're fighting in, as well as just the mission type itself. If you have shield disruption, then Shield Battery Booster doesn't help you at all, or it helps you very little. Outside of that, though, if you're taking this to the Hollow Bow, Radioactive Zone, Fungus Bog, Magma Core, where just the environment itself can hurt you and cause just a little bit of chip damage, you also don't get the biggest bonus, and you can also take like friendly fire damage. There's a lot of ways to lose Shield Battery Booster. If you take Shield Blink, it does get better. I don't know. This one's always been an awkward one for me. Usually I just build it for more cooling, because otherwise this kind of sucks. And then usually more electricity or armor breaking if I want to beat big things. You can do manual heat dump with this as well. It's kind of a weird one, because it's kind of bugged at the moment, so if you do overheat it, you start regenerating your shield right away. I doubt that's going to stay forever, though. And I also find the other tier 5 with thermal feedback loop being a little bit awkward to use this with, but it's okay. Up next, we have thermal exhaust feedback. Thermal exhaust feedback gives us fire on our shots, which scales based on the amount of heat that you have on the Drak, so the more powerful the fire, the more heat your Drak is at. But you can overheat your gun quicker because you get more heat per shot, as well as you also get a longer overheat duration. I'm thinking this one's high A tier, similar to impact deflection. It's high A tier, low S tier, kind of in the same boat. I think high A tier. High A tier seems like a fair place to put thermal exhaust feedback. This one is pretty good. This one gets you fire damage on every shot, so you can burn through things really quickly. It's probably even higher on like rival presence missions, where you can actually light the robots on fire fairly fast with this. And it does good damage towards big enemies. It doesn't really make the Drak any better against, well, smaller enemies like swarmers, but it still does make it better against the standard enemies you're going to be fighting a lot, so grunts, guards. Usually I'll go with faster rate of fire, or I'll go with more projectile speed. Both these are great for this one. You could go with less heat per shot, but that makes it easier to keep the heat on an enemy, but it will take longer to actually get the heat build up, and once you get used to that, it's pretty nice to not need that. Going to the extra ammo so that we can use it more often. Cooling is not bad on this, because sometimes you can get it pretty hot and you might need to use the weapon again really quick. But if you don't have that problem, you could go with the better accuracy, or you could go with hot feet, because sometimes you do overheat this. And electricity rounds on top of that, but armor breaking is also good, and same with plasma splash. And then I'll usually go with the thermal feedback loop so that I can build up heat even quicker. It does take getting used to this overclock, but it is just a straight upgrade to the Drak, and it's really good on any sort of robot mission. And then our last one is Overtuned Particle Accelerator. I'm going to put Overtuned Particle Accelerator high up into A tier as well. It's another great overclock for the Drak. Lets you have a lot of damage at very close range. It doesn't let you have very much long range though, so you will need a secondary for long range, which you do kind of have now with the crossbow. You could also take it with something like shape shells from the boomstick. That's a great option too. The way that I usually build the Overtuned Particle Accelerator is going for more heat reduction and faster cooling, as well as more ammo. You don't really need better accuracy or reduced spread for this weapon because it's just not that great if you have it. The vertical spread is still pretty crazy. The horizontal spread is a little bit better, but you're still firing in a pretty big cone, so accuracy is not as useful as going with either the cooling or just the overheat if you do find yourself overheating this. Any of them in tier 4 are really good. You can go with Plasma Splash for clearing up crowds faster, electricity rounds for getting a little bit more damage towards things, and armor breaking to hurt bigger things like Praetorians. Any of these are fine. Usually I go with the Plasma Splash, and then I'll go with the Thermal Feedback Loop, just because the manual overheat doesn't really help us with this one, so this is a better option in my opinion. Drak's a pretty solid weapon overall, and it's got really solid overclocks, and some really fun overclocks, ones that do change it up quite a bit, which I really enjoy. Thanks everybody for watching this. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Tell me your thoughts on the Drak overclocks down in the comments below. Which ones are you really enjoying? Which ones do you may or may not like? Special thanks to the supporters of this channel. These are my members over here on YouTube, patrons over on Patreon. They get early access to videos just like this. If you'd like to be a part of that, there are links in the description. Thanks everybody for doing that. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you guys have a great day. Bye-bye.